folks. My name is Keith Simon. For 2.5 months last year, I was an ecumenical accompanier in Palestine and Israel for the World Council of Churches. There, because since the country of Palestine was subdivided by the United Nations to provide a safe home for Jewish people after World War II, there's been an ongoing conflict between the two peoples, between incoming Jewish population and existing Palestinian population, something that Israelis refer to as their kind of National Day of Freedom or National Freedoms, and Palestinians refer to as the Nakba. Ilan Pappé, an Israeli historian, has characterized this as the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, written a great book about that. It's an ongoing ethnic cleansing, something the Palestinians refer to as the Nakba. One of the marks of the Nakba is the encroaching wall around Palestine, consistently taking Palestinian territory and squeezing Palestinians into an ever smaller and smaller space, with a bunch of barricades built within Palestine itself, so that people can't even freely travel within their own country, let alone out of it. Living in the shadow of the wall is a physical presence, and it is also a soul-depressing presence, something I took note of in Bethlehem, where I was stationed. The first night we were there, this image of the wall, the moon shining through the barbed wire, and just the sense of being oppressed and held captive. These folks are trying to work in Israel. They're Palestinians. 100,000 Palestinians a day work in Israel and try to move freely, but they're not allowed to move freely. The Israelis control every movement and remind them of it by slowing the movements down. What's it like to be a child born into a culture like this, into a place like this, in a time like this? These children are at a school in Tukwu, a village outside of Bethlehem that has natural resources that Israelis want, and so the military presence is there all the time. Overseeing the kids, this is art therapy. One of the kids was killed, a 17-year-old boy killed 2 years ago at a demonstration. It's on YouTube, you can see who's just there, just killed. This is the Israelis confiscating his body, which is something that they do when they kill people. They take the bodies to punish the family. This is soldiers tear gassing students at the same school. When we were there, this happened a couple of times, and happens frequently there. The soldiers even chase the students into the school. This child was shot at a Palestinian refugee camp in Bethlehem, just standing outside a food distribution center, and shot. Nobody knows why. This child was taken by the Israeli forces. It's fairly common. They come into the house at 3 o'clock in the morning and take children. This particular boy is on dialysis, and his uncle, holding the poster, would like to know where he is and if he's still on dialysis. An image of Jesus that was present in Nablus at the Church of Jacob's Well. Just a reminder that Jesus comes from this territory. This is clearly a Palestinian man. A Palestinian home crushed to rubble, as thousands of Palestinian homes are crushed to rubble by the Israeli military. You can't build without their permission, and you can't get their permission. Chemical factories close to Tulkarm, close to Nablus, placed in Palestine because they're illegal in Israel. They can't meet environmental standards. This is one that's particularly close to a Palestinian farm, as is the wall on the other side, which has taken land from the Palestinian farmer. Farmer and his wife, Fayaz and Mona, struggling to resist and resisting by not participating in the system that oppresses them. As Fayaz says, if we follow the logic of nature and share with one another, then we are not captivated by capital. Capital, he said, is the real problem here. It's not Israel. Israel's just a good tool. But the capital are the ones that came and tore his farm down twice and imprisoned him for 2 years. It's the capitalist system, he says, that we have to fight. And we fight it by resisting, by purchasing products from farms, by staying off grid as much as possible, by not buying products from the system that oppresses us. Palestinian resistance takes many forms and has, not been that effective, but at least there's still some parts of Palestine left, if not very many. This is the Trump peace plan. This is a response to the Trump peace plan in Bethlehem, a protest. And in Bethlehem, which is supposedly a sovereign Palestinian city, tear gas, sound grenades, smoke bombs met the protesters. This is a form of resistance, praying at the wall with Christians from across Bethlehem coming there Friday nights at 5 o'clock. These are two people who resist, a Palestinian woman and a Jewish woman, both of whom lost family in the conflicts, coming together as many families do, Jewish, Palestinian, Jewish, Israeli, Palestinian, coming together to hold one another and to say, this shall not happen to our children's children. This is a school that educates children, Palestinian children, Christian and Muslim, also had Jewish children in it up until 2002. They're not allowed to go there anymore. This particular school is under a demolition order by the Israeli military because I think the Israeli military see it as a countering the narrative of Palestinians as terrorists. Palestinians as peace educators, as teaching one another peaceful ways, doesn't support that narrative, and so the Israeli military would like to get rid of it. These are Jewish Israeli women who don't support the narrative of either, and who are at a checkpoint trying to ensure that their grandchildren are paying good attention and looking after Palestinians who are under their protection, really, and shouldn't be terrorized by them. These grandmothers belong to an organization called Maxim Watch, which believes that Israel has a bright future ahead of it, but will never have it as long as it's an occupying country. B'Tselem, a Jewish Israeli human rights organization, has named what's going on in Palestine and Israel as apartheid and is calling on the world to pay attention to what's going on there and to try and bring a stop to it. One of the ways we can bring a stop to it is by buying products from Palestinians through Zatoun. This is a picture from their website. They supply olive oil, soap, and spices. And by supporting other Palestinian organizations and carvers from Bethlehem, glassblowers from Hebron, date farmers from the Jericho Valley, and by not buying products that come from places like those chemical factories that are owned by Israel and use Palestinian resources and pollute the Palestinian environment. There are things that we can all do, like writing our government and telling them to demand the Israelis stop, to stop sending arms to the Israelis, to stop supporting the occupation. I hope this has provided some information, and I'll be glad to provide more if needed.